I'm Mackenzie, 29, and my Seattle apartment isn't just a place, it's my victory trophy. After years of struggle for 3 years, this has been my sanctuary from my controlling parents and entitled sister, Brooke. Don't make a fuss. Not a question, just a command. They never asked, I just packed a truck and showed up at my door. Then came that family dinner when mom and dad dropped their bomb. Your sister's moving in. But when it opened, it wasn't me standing there. And their faces, absolutely priceless. I've made it mine. With secondhand furniture, I've slowly upgraded. Plants that somehow haven't died, and walls decorated with both my own designs and art from local creators I admire. If you've ever had family walk all over your boundaries, let me know where you're watching from and subscribe to join me on this wild ride. Let me back up and paint you a clearer picture of my life. I've worked at Horizon Creative for 5 years, finally landing a senior graphic designer position last spring. The promotion came with a decent raise. When we were kids, my dance recitals were often missed because Brooke had a cold or needed help with homework. My 10th birthday party was canceled because Brooke, then 13, had gotten detention and mom and dad were too stressed to handle a house full of kids. Meanwhile, Brooke's 13th birthday featured a professional DJ and catering. Not enough to afford anything fancy in Seattle's insane housing market, but enough to comfortably cover rent on my one-bedroom plus office apartment in an older building in Capitol Hill. Her resume reads like a tour of the city's retail and restaurant scene. He seemed like a decent guy from the few times I met him, with a stable job in construction management. I wasn't surprised when she called me crying that they'd broken up. When she gets fired, it's always the employer's fault. Dad works in insurance and mom is a part-time school administrator. They're not wealthy, but they're stable, something they achieved through careful financial planning. According to her, he was controlling because he suggested they create a budget together. She's always quitting because a manager had it out for her or the environment was toxic. Yet somehow she always has the latest iPhone and designer clothes. The hardwood floors creak and the pipes sometimes make concerning noises, but the bay window in the living room sold me instantly. This apartment represents something bigger than just a place to sleep. For years I lived paycheck to paycheck. Sometimes with roommates I found on Craigslist, other times crashing on my best friend Grace's couch when things got really tight. I ate ramen for dinner more nights than I cared to admit. She's an elementary school teacher with boundless energy and zero filter. We have weekly wine nights where we dissect everything from dating disasters to workplace politics. My coworker Justin frequently joins us, along with his boyfriend Ethan. These people know the real me. They've seen me at my worst and still choose to hang out with me. The graphic design industry is competitive, and breaking in meant taking low-paying jobs and dealing with clients who thought exposure was adequate payment. Each rent check I write now feels like a middle finger to everyone who said my artsy career would never support me. My social circle is small but solid. Grace has been my ride or die since college. Then there's my family, particularly my sister, Brooke. Brooke is 32 but acts like she's still in college. Growing up, she was the undisputed favorite child. This pattern continued into adulthood. Brooke has never held a job longer than 8 months. Her relationship history follows a similar pattern. Her latest boyfriend, Troy, lasted almost a year, a record for Brooke. The real issue is that our parents enable all of this. When Brooke needs money for rent, which is often, they transfer it without question. My parents, Richard and Corinne, raised us in a comfortable suburban home about an hour outside the city. Ironically enough, their parenting style could be described as traditional with a side of manipulation. Family loyalty is paramount and disagreement is seen as disrespect. Mom specializes in guilt trips that would impress a travel agent. We just want what is best for you really means we know better than you do. Dad prefers the direct approach, stating his opinion as fact and expecting compliance. As Mom served it, Dad cleared his throat in that way that signals an announcement is coming. Challenging him usually results in him shutting down the conversation entirely. This brings me to that fateful family dinner 3 weeks ago. I try to have dinner with my parents twice a month, partly out of genuine desire to maintain a relationship, partly to manage the guilt that builds up if I go too long without seeing them. Kicked her out of their apartment. The meal went smoothly enough, with the usual inquiries about my job and not so subtle questions about my dating life. This particular Sunday, Mom had made pot roast, my favorite, which should have been my first clue something was up. Then came dessert, homemade apple pie with vanilla ice cream. "Mackenzie, we need to discuss something important," he began, his tone immediately putting me on edge. "And you have that extra room you use as an office? Makes perfect sense." As if my apartment, which I paid for with my own money, was somehow community property. "What's up?" I asked, trying to sound casual while mentally calculating when I'd last called or visited, wondering if I'd forgotten some family obligation. "It's about your sister," Mom interjected, placing a hand on Dad's arm. "She's going through a rough patch. Troy broke up with her," Dad continued, his voice carrying a note of annoyance that suggested he thought Troy was the one making a mistake. "Oh." I wasn't surprised, just sad for her. "It's tough. Is she staying with you guys for now?" The look they exchanged made my stomach drop. "Your sister's moving in with you?" "Well, that's what we wanted to talk about," Mom said, her voice taking on that sugary quality that meant I wasn't going to like what came next. I nearly choked on my pie. "What?" "Your sister's moving in. Don't make a fuss," Dad said firmly. "She needs a place to stay. My apartment is tiny. It's a 1-bedroom with a small office, not a 2-bedroom. It didn't make any sense at all. They hadn't asked. They were telling me, "Brooke doesn't need much room. She can make it work." All my supplies are there, my drawing tablet, my reference books. Did Brooke ask about this? I managed, trying to keep my voice steady. "I just got this promotion, but Seattle isn't cheap." "She's embarrassed," Mom explained. "You know how proud she is, but she needs family right now." "How long is this arrangement supposed to last?" "I can't just, we help each other without counting the cost or watching the clock. Brooke needs help, and you're in a position to provide it. I would think you'd want to be there for your sister during this difficult time." "Decided," Dad interrupted. "The truck is packed. She move in Saturday." And just like that, my sanctuary was being invaded, my boundaries trampled, and my opinion deemed irrelevant, all in the space of a 5-minute conversation over apple pie once she gets back on her feet. My fork clattered against the dessert plate as I set it down, appetite gone. "Wait a second. You can't just decide this without talking to me first." Dad's eyebrows rose in that way that had intimidated me since childhood. "We're talking now." "No, you're telling me. After you've already made the decision," I countered, feeling heat rise to my face. "You have that little office space, roamed out, as if I might have forgotten my own floor plan." "That's my workspace," I explained, trying to keep frustration from seeping into my voice. "I work from home 2 days a week. You can move that stuff into your bedroom." Dad dismissed with a wave of his hand. "Plenty of people work from their bedrooms." I took a deep breath, trying another angle. "Having another person will increase all my expenses, utilities, internet, groceries." "Brooke will contribute," Mom assured me, though her lack of eye contact told me even she didn't believe this. "And when will that be?" I pressed. Another exchange of glances between my parents. "Well, we can't put an exact timeline on it," Mom hedged. "Until she's stable again," which could be weeks, months, years. The last word came out sharper than I intended. "That's what family does, Mackenzie," Mom said, her voice taking on that martyrdom tone I knew so well. Dad leaned forward, elbows on the table. "This isn't a negotiation." End of discussion. As if summoned by her name, the front door opened and Brooke walked in. Her eyes were red-rimmed, but her makeup was flawless as always. She glanced at the table, immediately reading the tension. "You told her?" She asked quietly, hovering in the doorway like a Victorian heroine about to faint. "We're discussing it," Mom said, reaching out a hand to draw Brooke to the table. "I wouldn't if I had any other option." Brooke sat down, immediately reaching for her water glass. "I know this is a lot to ask," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "He's been so controlling about money lately, checking all the credit card statements, questioning every purchase. Then he found out about the Nordstrom card and just exploded. Said I had a shopping addiction." "What happened with Troy exactly?" I asked, trying to understand the situation better. Brooke's eyes welled with tears. Actually, this wasn't the first time Brooke's spending had caused problems. She sniffled delicately. "Can you believe that? Just because I like nice things. Something about too many tardies, which is so unfair because the bus is always late." I could believe it. But her boyfriend is there all the time and they fight constantly. I barely slept. Last Christmas, she asked to borrow my credit card for one small gift and maxed it out on designer boots and a handbag for herself in your apartment. Dad added as if this contribution absolved him from further responsibility. The rest she handle once she's employed again. It was in his name, she admitted. He gave me 2 weeks to find somewhere else. The decision had been made before I even walked through their door tonight. "This is a big change and I need some time. We'll be at your place Saturday morning at 9:00 a.m. What about your job at the boutique?" Last I heard, she was working at an upscale clothing store in the mall. Another tear slipped down her cheek. They let me go. The spare bedroom had been being painted for approximately 3 years. We would take her in ourselves, but you know your father's allergies have been acting up, and the spare bedroom is being painted. The full picture was becoming clearer. This wasn't just a bad breakup. It was Brooke's life imploding on multiple fronts, again. I needed to clear my head before returning to the apartment that would soon be invaded. "Honey," Mom interjected, "we've already promised Brooke she can stay with you." Dad's mysterious allergies always seemed to flare up when it was convenient. "I tried staying with Heather," Brooke added, referring to a friend I'd met once or twice, "and I've already helped her pay off some of her credit card debt." Grace listened, her expression shifting from surprise to outrage on my behalf. "It's your apartment, your name on the lease." The walls were closing in. Every objection I raised was met with a counter. Every concern was dismissed. "I need to think about this," I finally said, standing up from the table. "There's nothing to think about," Dad replied firmly. "The truck is rented." Then her eyes lit up, in that way that usually preceded either a brilliant idea or a terrible one. I stirred my laude absently. Either they wear me down or I give in to avoid the conflict, and now they've already promised Brooke. I said my goodbyes shortly after, declining offers of leftover pie and additional guilt. The drive home was a blur of frustration and betrayal. My phone buzzed repeatedly with texts from Brooke. "Can't wait to be roomies again, just like when we were kids." These essays on my summer vacation are melting my brain. She pushed the stack aside. "You look like someone killed your cat. What's going on?" She leaned forward. "My cousin Tyler just moved to Seattle for a job at Amazon. He's staying in an Airbnb while apartment hunting. Do you think my queen bed will fit in the office? Should I bring my Vitamix, or do you have a good blender?" Each message increased my anxiety. Memories of sharing a room with Brooke as teenagers flooded back, my journals read, clothes borrowed without asking and returned stained, friends monopolized. Now it would be my professional equipment at risk. My carefully cultivated peace disrupted. Instead of going straight home, I pulled into the parking lot of Analog Coffee, a local spot I frequented. The familiar scent of espresso and the low hum of conversation helped ground me as I ordered a latte. "Mackenzie, is that you?" I turned to see Grace sitting by the window grading papers. The universe was throwing me a lifeline. "Hey," I said, sliding into the chair across from her. "Mind if I join you?" "Please do." And so I told her everything, the words tumbling out in a rush of frustration and panic. "They can't just decide this for you," she said when I finished. "You know my parents. Once they've made up their minds, then unmake it for them," Grace said firmly. "Tell them no. I've tried saying no to my family. It never works." Grace was quiet for a moment, tapping her pen against her mug. "What if," she said slowly, "the office wasn't available?" "What do you mean? I can't remodel in 5 days." "No, but what if someone else was already using it? What if he became your temporary roommate?" I blinked at her. "You want me to move a stranger into my apartment to prevent my sister from moving in?" "Not a total stranger. He's my cousin. I've known him his whole life." She pulled out her phone and showed me a photo of a guy about our age with dark hair and glasses. "He's quiet, clean, works long hours, and is desperate for a more affordable place to stay while he looks for something permanent." It was a crazy idea, completely inappropriate, potentially disastrous. By the next evening, I was sitting across from Tyler at a Thai restaurant near my apartment, conducting what felt like the world's most rushed roommate interview. "Tell me more," I said. He worked as a software developer and had just started at Amazon after relocating from Chicago. Unlike the image of the typical tech bro, he seemed thoughtful and a bit reserved. "The Airbnb prices here are insane, and everything happened so fast with the job offer that I didn't have time to secure housing first." Grace's coffee shop suggestions snowballed faster than I could have imagined. He wasn't much of a cook, but was scrupulous about cleaning up after himself. He didn't party, had no pets, and his main hobby was reading science fiction novels. "I really appreciate you considering this," Tyler said, pushing his glasses up slightly. "My mom still tries to plan my life from 1,000 miles away. I just need time to get to know the neighborhoods and save up for the ridiculous deposits around here." The more we talked, the more reasonable the idea seemed. Tyler came by the next evening to see the apartment. And by Wednesday, just 3 days after that fateful family dinner, he had moved in his essentials. Clothes, laptop, books, and not much else. The office is small, and while there's a futon that folds out to a full bed, it's not exactly spacious. Tyler was tall and lanky, with a quiet voice that matched Grace's description of him. I consolidated my work materials, moving my drawing tablet and most important supplies to a corner of my bedroom. It wasn't ideal, but it was workable for the short term. I responded vaguely, neither confirming nor denying Saturday's moving plans. "Grace speaks very highly of you," I said, picking up my pad thai. "But I should be upfront. This would be a temporary arrangement. My sister was supposed to move in this weekend. My parents decided this without asking me, and I'm trying to prevent that from happening. That's more than fine," he assured me. "I'm planning to find my own place within a couple of months anyway." I knew I was only delaying the inevitable confrontation, but each day gave Tyler more claim to the space. He makes virtually no noise, cleans up after himself, and even brought home a French press coffee maker for the kitchen as a thank you gift. We discussed practical matters, rent. He offered more than I expected. Utilities, kitchen privileges, bathroom scheduling, even if it's to prevent a worse roommate situation. Tyler worked long hours and mentioned he often stayed late at the office. "I should also mention," I said, lowering my voice slightly, "the real reason I need a roommate quickly is complicated." Instead of the judgment I half expected, Tyler nodded understandingly. "Grace mentioned something about family pressure. I get it. You don't think it's terrible of me to block my sister?" He considered this before answering. "I think it's your apartment and your life. Sometimes family doesn't understand boundaries, By the end of dinner, I had a new temporary roommate. The office transformation happened quickly. Tyler helped rearrange the furniture to maximize the small space, and by Wednesday night, the office had become a functional, if compact, bedroom. Meanwhile, my phone continued to buzz with messages from my parents and Brooke. Dad called twice, but I let it go to voicemail, texting later that I was in meetings. "You'll have to tell them eventually," Grace pointed out during our Thursday wine night, which we'd relocated to her apartment to give Tyler some space. "I know," I sighed, refilling our glasses. "I'm planning to call them tomorrow night. I just needed to get everything settled first. How's it going with Tyler? Any red flags?" I shook my head. "Honestly, he's the perfect roommate so far. The quiet ones often are. I've spent 3 years creating this perfect solo space, and now in the span of a week, I've got a roommate." "Told you he was a good egg," Grace said, looking smug. "It's weird, though," I admitted. "Sometimes the devil you choose is better than the devil thrust upon you," Grace said with mock wisdom. "Or in this case, the angel you choose versus the demon sister." "Brooke's not a demon," I said automatically, the lifetime habit of defending my sister kicking in despite everything. "She's just a lot." "A lot of trouble," Grace muttered into her wine glass. Back at my apartment that night, I found Tyler reading on the couch, a cup of tea on the coffee table. He started to get up when I entered. "Don't move on my account," I said. "There's plenty of room." He settled back down as I kicked off my shoes. "How was my night?" "Therapeutic," I answered, flopping into the armchair. "Grace sends her love." By the way, she texted earlier to make sure I wasn't secretly an axe murderer, he said with a small smile. "Apparently, she's having second thoughts about setting you up with a relative stranger." "Are you an axe murderer?" "I mean, not currently," he replied. "Too much effort. I prefer my job's slower method of soul destruction." I laughed, surprised by his dry humor. "First week at Amazon that bad?" "Let's just say I understand why they have crying rooms." He marked his place in his book. "How about you? Ready for tomorrow's family confrontation?" I groaned, not even slightly. Part of me is tempted to just not be here when they arrive. "Would that help in the long run, though?" "No," I admitted. "It would just delay the inevitable and probably make it worse." I chewed my lip thoughtfully. I should call them tonight, give them a heads up. Each time I picked up my phone, I found a reason to put it down again. Tyler and I were sharing a pizza and watching a documentary when my phone buzzed with a text from my mother. "Please make sure the office is cleared out. Love you." I told myself I was waiting for the right moment, but in truth, I was avoiding conflict just as I always had. "Want me to make myself scarce for that conversation?" I considered the offer, then shook my head. "No need. I'll take it in my room." But I didn't make the call that night or the next morning. Friday evening arrived with still no direct communication about the changed situation. "Don't forget we'll be there at 9 o'clock a.m. tomorrow with Brooke's things." I stared at the message, anxiety churning in my stomach. Tyler glanced over, raising an eyebrow. "They're still coming tomorrow," I said, showing him the text. "I never told them." "What are you going to do?" Typical Seattle weather that matched my mood perfectly. I barely slept, rehearsing conversations in my head and imagining worst-case scenarios. Tyler and I were having coffee at the kitchen counter, an island of calm before the storm, but I'm out of options in time. I took a deep breath. "I guess I'll be having an unexpected family reunion in the morning. Do you want me to be out for that?" Tyler asked. "I can make myself scarce for a few hours." I considered this, then made a decision that would change everything. "Actually, if you don't mind, I'd like you to be here. Standing up for yourself isn't wrong, even if it feels uncomfortable." I straightened my shoulders. Behind it was a small rental truck that presumably contained Brooke's possessions. At least this way they'll be too shocked to have a prepared response. In fact, I think you should answer the door. Saturday morning arrived with gray skies and a steady drizzle. You sure about this? He asked, glancing at the clock. No, I admitted, clutching my mug like a lifeline. We could still call them, he suggested. Give them a heads up. I shook my head. They just try to talk me out of it or worse, show up anyway and demand that you leave immediately. We're looking for Mackenzie Wilson. But something had shifted in me over the past week. Perhaps it was the realization that I found the courage to take control of my space in a different way. Or maybe it was the simple fact of having an ally present. Tyler nodded, adjusting his glasses. For what it's worth, I think you're doing the right thing. The doorbell rang earlier than expected. My heart jumped to my throat. They're early, I whispered unnecessarily, panic rising. Through the window, I could see my parents' silver CUV double parked in front of the building. Tyler set down his coffee. I can still stay in the room if you'd rather handle this yourself. For a brief moment, I was tempted to take the offer to fall back into old patterns and handle the conflict alone. No, I said firmly. Answer the door. Tyler nodded and walked calmly to the entrance, while I positioned myself just out of immediate sight in the kitchen. The doorbell rang again, more insistently this time, followed by a knock. I heard the door open and held my breath. Can I help you? Tyler's voice was polite but confused, exactly as we'd discussed. There was a moment of complete silence. I think we have the wrong apartment, my father's voice finally said, uncertainty clear in his tone. This is Mackenzie's apartment, Tyler confirmed. I'm Tyler, her roommate. Another beat of silence, followed by my mother's voice. Roommate? There must be some mistake. We're her parents. This is Sister Brooke. I could picture the scene perfectly, my father's face reddening. My mother's bewildered expression, Brooke's mouth hanging open in shock. It was time to make my appearance. I stepped around the corner and into view. Hi, Mom, Dad, Brooke. You're early. My father's eyes darted between Tyler and me, confusion morphing rapidly into anger. What's going on here? Who is this man? Before I could answer, my mother pushed past Tyler into the apartment, her gaze immediately falling on his belongings. The stack of books on the coffee table, the laptop on the desk in the corner, the jacket hanging by the door. Mackenzie Jane Wilson, she said, using my full name as if I were still a child. What have you done? Her voice rose on the last word, causing the door to apartment 4B to crack open as my neighbor, Mrs. Garcia, peeked out curiously. Brooke remained in the hallway, her expression shifting from shock to hurt to anger in rapid succession. You've had a roommate to keep me out? Can we please take this inside? I said, mortified at the public spectacle. Mrs. Garcia, sorry for the noise. No problem, dear, she replied, clearly not meaning it, in no hurry to close her door, Please do, he replied firmly, or I'll have to ask your visitors to leave the premises. Everyone inside, I said, gesturing to my family, no. Reluctantly, they complied. Tyler closed the door, mercifully shutting out the curious neighbors. The small apartment suddenly felt even smaller with 5 people inside it. Sit down, I said, pointing to the couch and armchair, please. Home without even asking me, Brooke's expression was hard to read, part hurt, part defiance, but also something else. Something that looked almost like understanding. I have worked incredibly hard for this apartment. I continued. I saved for months for the security deposit. I painted it myself. I bought furniture piece by piece when I could afford it. This is the first place that has ever been truly mine, and I have the we need you to leave immediately. Tyler stood his ground calm but firm, sir. I've signed a rental agreement with Mackenzie. I live here now. Rental agreement. This is Tyler. He's Grace's cousin and my new roommate. He moved in 3 days ago. You did this deliberately? Dad said, his voice low with anger, to shut out your sister. Yes, I admitted, refusing to sugarcoat it. Tyler moved to stand by the kitchen counter, giving us space while remaining present. The moment of truth had arrived. I took a deep breath, unclenching my fists at my sides. The apartment fell silent as everyone waited for an explanation. They only sound the faint ticking of the wall clock and Brooke's occasional theatrical sniffles. I need everyone to listen to me. I began my voice steadier than I expected, really my father as voice Rose Mackenzie. What is he talking about? Brooke chose this moment to enter the drama, fully dropping dramatically onto the hallway floor. For as long as I can remember, what I want, what I need, has always come second in this family. Please let me finish. She pressed her lips together, clearly unhappy but complying. This pattern never stopped. In college, when I needed help with tuition, I was told to take out loans because you were helping Brooke with her maxed out credit cards. When I graduated and was living on ramen to make rent, you were paying Brooke as a security deposit on her third apartment in 2 years. I turned to look directly at my sister Brooke. I love you. You re my sister. But this isn't about not wanting. The words felt dangerous, like stepping onto thin ice. But I pressed on. When we were kids, Brooke's suicidal were family events with flowers and dinner celebrations. Mine were attended if it was convenient. My 10th birthday was canceled because Brooke got detention, but her 13th had professional catering. I'm going to be homeless, she wailed. My own sister would rather have a total stranger than help family a door across. Father stepped into the apartment, his posture rigid. Young man, he addressed. Tyler, directly, I don't know what Mackenzie has told you, but there has been a misunderstanding. Perfect. Is everything all right out here, Mr. Delgado? Our building manager appeared at the top of the stairs, attracted by the commotion. We've had noise complaints 5 minutes into this confrontation, and I'd already managed to involve half the building. My father was staring daggers at Tyler. My mother was inspecting the apartment like she was cataloging violations. Brooke was creating a scene in the hallway, and the neighbors were getting a free Saturday morning show. Everything is fine, I said. The hall opened, and now Mr. Peterson was watching too, to Mr. Delgado. My voice strained. Family discussion, we're taking it inside now. My parents took the couch, while Brooke, after a dramatic sniffle, perched on the arm of the couch, as far from them as possible, listened without interrupting. Dad opened his mouth, but Mom placed a hand on his arm, silencing him. I took that as permission to continue. And a DJ, that as not fair, Mom started, but I held up my hand to help you. This is about the fact that once again, Mom and Dad decided what would happen with my life and my right to decide. Who lives here? I gestured toward Tyler, who was standing quietly by the counter. I did because for once I decided to prioritize what I needed instead of what everyone else wanted from me. So you rather have a stranger in your home than your own sister? Mom asked, her voice thick with disappointment. It is a fair question, Tyler replied calmly. I'm Tyler Ramirez. I recently moved to Seattle from Chicago for a software development position at Amazon. I'm Grace's cousin. That's cold, Mackenzie. I didn't raise you to be so selfish. You can call her to verify that I needed temporary housing while I searched for an apartment, and Mackenzie needed a roommate. It was mutually beneficial. He's not, I began, but Tyler stepped forward slightly. If I may, he said politely. I understand this is a family matter, and I am an outsider here. When I couldn't babysit Brooke's goldfish because I had a final exam. When I couldn't lend Mom my car because I needed it for work. If you had asked. If you had respected me enough to have a conversation instead of an announcement. If there had been any consideration of what this would mean for my life and work. Text me when you'd like me to come back. When I couldn't consign Brooke's lease because my own credit was still recovering from student loans. But Mackenzie and I have a legal roommate agreement. I vet paid rent and moved my belongings in. I am happy to give you privacy to discuss this further, but I wanted to make the situation clear. Dad turned his glare on. Tyler, and who exactly are you? Where did you come from? How do we know you were not taking advantage of our daughter? Dad, I exclaimed, mortified. My little sister hates me so much she'd rather live with a total stranger. This isn't about you, not really. Mutually beneficial, Dad repeated sarcastically. While your own sister is left without a place to live. The word selfish hit me like a slap. How many times had I heard that when I tried to set even the smallest boundary? Where am I supposed to go now? The truck is rented. All my stuff is packed. It's not selfish to have boundaries, I said quietly. It's not selfish to expect to be asked rather than told. It's not selfish to want some control over my own living space. We're family, Mom said, as if those two words trumped all other considerations. Family helps family. Well, it's your father's allergies have been particularly bad lately, and I would have helped, I replied. An uncomfortable silence fell over the room. The spare room has been being painted for what, 3 years now? Tyler shifted slightly, then spoke again. I think I'll step out for a bit, give you all some privacy to talk. He looked at me. I nodded gratefully, and he slipped out the door, leaving me alone with my family. The apartment felt both emptier and more pressurized without his calming presence. Why push me onto Mackenzie? Why not help me yourselves? You're tired of bailing her out, but you feel too guilty to cut her off completely? So you thought you'd make her my responsibility instead? She's always been so responsible, and you could help with rent. As soon as the door closed, Brooke stood up. Well, this is just perfect, she said, tears welling in her eyes. You can't keep bouncing from crisis to crisis expecting others to catch you. For all her drama and self-centeredness, this had to hurt. I don't hate you, Brooke, I sighed, suddenly exhausted. It sure feels like it's about me, she shot back. You could stay with Mom and Dad, I suggested. Dad's allergies seemed to come and go conveniently. Dad's face reddened. Now wait just a minute. No, she's right, Brooke interrupted, surprising all of us. She turned to our parents. Why exactly can't I stay with you? Mom looked flustered. Brooke, Mom gasped. Language. No, I want to know, she pressed, suddenly animated in a way I hadn't seen before. Dad and Mom exchanged uncomfortable glances. We thought ... double quotes, Dad began, then stopped. You need to learn independence, Brooke. You're 32 years old. I blinked in surprise. This was not the direction I had expected this conversation to go. So your solution was to force me on Mackenzie? Brooke asked incredulously. How exactly does that teach me independence? We thought ... Mom tried again. You and your sister could support each other. The truth dawned on me slowly, then all at once. You weren't trying to help Brooke by sending her to me, I said quietly. You were trying to help yourselves. The silence that followed confirmed my suspicion. For the first time, I saw my parents not as the all-powerful authorities of my childhood, but as flawed, tired people who had run out of solutions. Brooke let out a short, bitter sound. Wow, so nobody actually wanted me. That's just great. She turned away, wiping at her eyes, and I felt a surge of sympathy despite everything. I'm going to wait in the car, she said, voice thick with tears. Figure out what you're doing with my stuff. She walked out, closing the door with surprising gentleness behind her. The three of us remaining sat in uncomfortable silence for a long moment. We were trying to do what's best for everyone, Mom finally said, her voice small. By making decisions for everyone without consulting them, I replied, that's not doing what's best. That's doing what's easiest. Dad sighed heavily, suddenly looking older than his 58 years. We've supported Brooke through 3 evictions, 5 job losses, and more relationship drama than a soap opera. Because it's easier to steamroll me than to set boundaries with Brooke. We're exhausted, Mackenzie. We thought maybe if she had your influence, so you volunteered me for the job without asking. I finished for him. Neither of them denied it. I'm not going to be your solution, I said firmly. I love you both, and I love Brooke, but I won't set myself on fire to keep everyone else warm. Not anymore. The daughter I raised would never let her sister struggle. Dad stood up abruptly. We should go figure out what to do with the truck and Brooke's things. Mom followed his lead, gathering her purse. This isn't like you, Mackenzie. The guilt trip was so predictable I almost laughed. The daughter you raised is standing right here, Mom. I'm just finally speaking up for myself. Thinking he might have forgotten his key, I opened it without checking the peephole. They left with minimal goodbyes, the atmosphere thick with disappointment and unresolved tension. She entered cautiously, as if she were now a guest rather than the entitled sister who had expected to move in without invitation. As the door closed behind them, I sank onto the couch, emotionally drained but also experiencing a strange light feeling I eventually recognized as relief. The confrontation I'd feared for so long had happened, and I was still standing. The apartment was still mine. And for perhaps the first time in my adult life, I had set a boundary with my family and held it, despite the guilt and pressure. I was about to text Tyler when there was a soft knock at the door. Brooke stood there alone, eyes red but dry. "Can we talk?" she asked quietly. "Just us?" "Yeah, he just moved here from Chicago, works at Amazon." I hesitated for just a moment before stepping aside to let Brooke in. I called Grace in a panic after dinner Sunday night. She suggested Tyler as an alternative to you moving in. It wasn't about not wanting you, Brooke. It was about not wanting to be told what would happen in my own home. It was about years of feeling like my needs always come second. "Mom and Dad left?" I asked, closing the door. She nodded. "They're sitting in the car, probably plotting their next move." I knew your place was small and we haven't exactly been close lately. It was easier to go along with it than to argue. But they insisted it was the only option, that you'd be fine with it. A ghost of a smile crossed her face. "Dad's doing that thing where he taps the steering wheel and mutters to himself. We've both been playing our assigned roles for so long, haven't we? You're the responsible one, I'm the mess. You achieve, I fail. You save, I spend." Tyler had texted that he was getting breakfast at the cafe down the street and would be back in an hour, giving us plenty of time to talk. I knew exactly what she meant, the familiar gesture our father made when his plans were derailed. Despite everything, I found myself smiling too. "Do you want some coffee?" I offered, moving toward the kitchen. Tyler bought a French press. It's not just liking nice things, it's an addiction. I buy things when I'm anxious or sad or empty. The high lasts about 5 minutes, then the guilt sets in. But by then, I've already spent money I don't have. "Sure," she said, perching on the edge of the couch. "He seems nice." "Grace's cousin, you said?" I busied myself with the coffee preparation, grateful for the distraction. "And you just happened to find a roommate the exact week I needed a place to stay." I paused, then decided honesty was the only path forward. Brooke nodded slowly, absorbing this. "So you really didn't want me here that badly?" Then Troy found the Nordstrom card I'd hidden and realized I'd lied about stopping. He said he couldn't trust me anymore. Each envying what the other had, neither of us seeing the whole picture. I turned to face her. "The truth is, Mackenzie, I'm jealous of you. I always have been." I poured the coffee and brought 2 mugs to the living room, settling into the armchair across from her. Brooke wrapped her hands around the mug but didn't drink. "You know what's weird? When Mom and Dad told me I'd be staying with you, I didn't want to. And you delivered good grades, solid career, financial independence. Had my resentment of being held to higher standards blinded me to the damage done by expecting nothing of Brooke? The social stuff, making friends, dating. You were always the fun one, the pretty one. Meanwhile, I'm 32 and back to square one again." This surprised me. "You didn't?" She shook her head. I wanted to say no. She trailed off, staring into her coffee. "I know that feeling," I said quietly. "I'm sure you do." She finally looked up at me. I'd never heard Brooke speak with such self-awareness before. "When did you become so insightful?" A small, sad smile. "Therapy." "For the past 6 months. Actually, Troy's idea originally, my shopping." She hesitated. This was more honesty than Brooke had shown in years. "I didn't know you were in therapy." I didn't tell anyone. I was embarrassed. The perpetual screw-up finally admitting she screwed up. She took a sip of coffee. I was making progress too. Had a budget, was sticking to it, mostly. I'm sorry, I said, and meant it. That must have been hard. It was, as she set down her mug. I nearly choked on my coffee. Jealous of me? But you were always the favorite. The favorite screw up, she corrected. They expected nothing from me and everything from you. I'd never considered our family dynamic from this perspective before. For what it's worth, I said carefully, I was always jealous of how easily things seemed to come to you. Brooke laughed. God, we're a mess, aren't we? A comfortable silence fell between us, more honest than any conversation we'd had in years. So what now? I finally asked. What are you going to do? She sighed. I don't know. I can't stay with Mom and Dad. That would be a disaster for my therapy progress. Most of my friends are partiers who would be terrible influences. What about Heather? You mentioned staying with her before. She and her boyfriend broke up 2 days ago. He moved out, but she can't afford the rent alone. She's looking for a roommate, actually. Brooke looked thoughtful. I hadn't considered it because Mom and Dad were so set on me staying with you. But maybe that could work, I encouraged. You said you were friends, right? Since college. She's one of the few friends who knows about my therapy and shopping issues. She'd be supportive, not an enabler. I could see the wheels turning in Brooke's mind as a plan began to form. Her place is closer to downtown too, which would be better for job hunting. Speaking of which, I ventured, what kind of job are you looking for? Brooke tucked her hair behind her ear, a gesture I remembered from childhood when she was feeling uncertain. The pay isn't amazing, but it's steady and they're pretty flexible if you're upfront with them. I've been thinking about that a lot, actually. I'm good with people, even if I've been unreliable in the past. My therapist suggested looking into something with more structure, maybe administrative work. I might know someone, I said. One of our clients at Horizon is always looking for front desk staff. I want to help, just not by having you take over my home without asking. Brooke's eyes widened slightly. You'd recommend me, after everything? You're my sister, I said simply. She nodded slowly. I understand that now. I'm sorry I didn't see it sooner. A text notification pinged on my phone, Tyler, asking if it was okay to come back yet. I replied affirmatively, then looked back at Brooke. I think this might be the first real conversation we've had in years, I observed. Probably since before college, she agreed. It's nice. Weird, but nice. The door opened and Tyler entered, carrying a bag from the bakery downstairs. He hesitated when he saw Brooke. Sorry, should I? It's fine, I assured him. Tyler, this is my sister Brooke. Brooke, this is Tyler. For the coffee and everything else. The roommate, Brooke said, standing to shake his hand. Sorry about the drama earlier. Tyler accepted her handshake with a polite smile. Family is complicated, I get it. I should go, Brooke said. Mom and Dad are probably wondering what is taking so long, and we need to figure out what to do with all my stuff in the truck. Let me know about Heather, I said. And I'll email my contact at Meridian Publishing on Monday about that position. Thanks, she said, and after a moment's hesitation, stepped forward to give me a quick, awkward hug. Mom's probably already drafting the guilt trip text messages. After she left, Tyler set the bakery bag on the counter. That seemed to go better than expected. It would have worked on me a week ago. Surprisingly, yes, I agreed, still processing the shift in our sibling dynamic. We actually talked like adults. And your parents? I sighed. That's going to take longer. They left angry and disappointed. To my surprise, she landed an interview within days. It hurt, but I recognized the tactic for what it was. An attempt to make me come crawling back, apologizing for my selfishness. Now I'm sad they're upset, but I'm not going to apologize for setting a boundary. He was often gone before I woke up and worked late most evenings, but we established a habit of sharing coffee on weekend mornings. He was tidy, respectful of my space, and unexpectedly easy to talk to once his initial reserve faded. True to prediction, my phone buzzed with a message from my mother less than an hour later, having set hours and clear expectations. And I opened the savings account that's harder to access than my checking. Baby steps. Asterisk, I hope you're happy with your decision. Brooke is devastated. Call when you're ready to apologize. I showed it to Tyler, who went sympathetically, classic guilt technique. One of her specialties, I agreed, putting the phone away without responding. And now, I considered the question. The next few days established a new pattern. Tyler and I settled into a surprisingly comfortable roommate routine. Brooke texted to let me know she was moving in with Heather temporarily, and I followed through by connecting her with my contact at Meridian. My parents maintained radio silence, except for a group text announcing that Sunday dinner would be postponed until further notice. Instead of giving in, I used the opportunity to work with my newly found therapist, prompted by seeing how therapy had helped Brooke to examine the family patterns I'd accepted for so long. Our sessions helped me understand that my parents' controlling behavior and my habitual compliance weren't simply personality traits, but a dysfunctional system that had shaped all our relationships. By the third week after the confrontation, Brooke had started her new job at Meridian and reported cautiously positive progress. "The structure helps," she texted. It was Grace who finally broke the stalemate with my parents by inviting all of us, including Tyler, to dinner at her apartment. "Neutral territory," she explained when I questioned her motives, "and I'll be there to referee if needed." The atmosphere tense but civil. To my surprise, my parents accepted, as did Brooke, and somehow on a rainy Saturday evening, a month after the confrontation, we found ourselves seated around Grace's dining table. "This is delicious, Grace," my mother said, breaking an awkward silence. "Did you make the sauce yourself?" "Tyler did, actually," Grace replied, nudging her cousin with her elbow. "He's the chef in the family." All eyes turned to Tyler, who looked embarrassed by the attention. "It's just marinara, my grandmother's recipe." "It's very good," my father said stiffly, the closest thing to approval he'd shown all evening. The conversation limped along through dinner, carefully avoiding any mention of the conflict, until Brooke, of all people, addressed the elephant in the room. "So are we going to talk about what happened or just pretend everything's normal while radiating awkwardness?" Mom's fork clattered against her plate. "Brooke, please." "No, she's right," Dad said, surprising all of us. He sat down his napkin and looked directly at me. "We owe you an apology, Mackenzie." In 29 years, I could count on one hand the number of times I'd heard my father apologize for anything. I nearly dropped my water glass. "Your mother and I have been doing some thinking," he continued, "and some talking with a professional." He said the last word as if it tasted strange in his mouth. "You're seeing a therapist?" I couldn't keep the shock from my voice. "Family counselor," Mom clarified quickly. "Just a few sessions. Pastor Jim recommended it." "The point is," Dad pressed on, "we've recognized that we may have been overly directed in our approach, pushing Mackenzie to be responsible, protecting Brooke from consequences. But we can see now that we've done neither of you any favors." "Controlling," Brooke translated. "The word is controlling, Dad." He frowned, but didn't dispute it. "We thought we were doing what was best for both of you. I'm having to unlearn 3 decades of bad habits." "We love you both so much," Mom added, her eyes glistening. "We never meant to hurt either of you." "We know that," I said softly, reaching across the table to touch her hand. "But impact matters more than intent sometimes." She nodded, squeezing my hand. "We're trying to learn that. It's not easy to change at our age." And Tyler, the catalyst who had unknowingly set this whole transformation in motion, I felt something shift inside me. "Tell me about it," Brooke said with a wry smile. The tension in the room had eased, replaced by something tentative but hopeful. We weren't fixed, not by a long shot, but we were talking. really talking, perhaps for the first time. As I looked around the table at my sister with her new determination, my parents with their halting attempts at change, Grace with her satisfied smile at seeing her plan work, the anger and resentment that had fueled my stand against my family was mellowing into something more sustainable, a quiet, steady conviction in my own worth and boundaries. We had a long way to go, but for the first time, it felt like we were all walking in the same direction. 3 months after that fateful Saturday, when a stranger opened my door instead of me, my life has transformed in ways I never could have predicted. Tyler, initially a temporary solution to a family crisis, has become a permanent roommate and one of my closest friends. His quiet presence and unwavering respect for boundaries helped me recognize what healthy relationships actually look like. We've settled into a comfortable routine of shared meals, occasional movie nights, and a mutual understanding that sometimes we both need space. I've even introduced him to some of my coworkers, expanding both our social circles. Brooke has surprised everyone, perhaps herself most of all. After starting at Meridian Publishing, she received her first performance review with no tardiness or absences, a personal record. She and Heather signed a year-long lease on their apartment, and Brooke has maintained her therapy appointments consistently. She still struggles with her shopping impulses, especially during stressful periods. But now she texts me when she feels the urge instead of surrendering to it. Last week, she proudly showed me her savings account balance, modest but growing steadily. My parents have been the slowest to change, which is understandable. Decades of established patterns don't transform overnight, but they're trying in their way. The family counseling sessions continue, and they've made visible efforts to respect my boundaries. Sunday dinners resumed after a 6-week hiatus, now with new ground rules. No unsolicited advice, no criticism disguised as concern, and most importantly, no decisions made for others. The first dinner was awkward, with Mom visibly biting her tongue several times and Dad retreating into silence when uncomfortable topics arose. But each gathering has gotten progressively easier. Last Sunday, Dad actually asked for my opinion on his retirement investment strategy instead of telling me what I should do with my own finances. Through therapy, I've begun to recognize how avoiding conflict had become my default mode. Last month, one negotiated a proper raise instead of accepting the initial offer with gratitude, something that old Mackenzie would never have dared. The idea that family means sacrificing your needs for others is a harmful myth that serves no one. My parents thought they were showing love by solving problems for us, but they were actually preventing us from developing the skills to solve our own problems. Even outside my family, I said yes to projects I didn't have time for, accepted blame that wasn't mine, and swallowed my opinions to keep peace. A crisis that forced us to confront patterns too long ignored. Dad still struggles to express vulnerability. Brooke still has days when the shopping apps call her name, and I still sometimes find myself swallowing words I should speak. And don't forget to like and subscribe if this story resonated with you. Remember, sometimes the hardest conversations lead to the most healing outcomes, and the most uncomfortable growth leads to the most authentic connections. Thank you for witnessing my journey, and I wish you courage on your own path to healthy boundaries and genuine relationships. I look around my apartment now, still my sanctuary, though differently configured with Tyler's books mingling with mine on the shelves, and feel a peace that comes not from avoiding conflict, but from surviving it. From standing in my truth and discovering that relationships that can't withstand honesty aren't relationships worth preserving in their current form. A small step that felt monumental. My own healing journey has been more internal, but no less significant. If you're facing similar struggles with family boundaries, know that standing firm isn't selfish. It is often the most loving choice you can make, both for yourself and for those who need to grow. One that has served her better than our parents' plan ever would have. The irony isn't lost on me that my parents' attempt to force their solution actually catalyzed positive change for everyone involved. Learning to stand firm without aggression or apology has transformed not just my family relationships, but my professional life as well. And I thought being a good daughter meant compliance, when what my family really needed was my honest voice. Sometimes the most loving thing we can do is to let people face the consequences of their choices. It's not cruelty, but respect for their capacity to grow. What I've come to understand is that true family, true connection of any kind, must be built on respect for each other's autonomy. Brooke thought she was being loved when she was actually being infantilized. When I refused to let Brooke move in, it wasn't rejection, but an opportunity for her to find her own solution, which she did. Their unwelcome truck, parked outside my building that rainy Saturday morning, didn't deliver what they intended, but it delivered exactly what we all needed. The journey continues, of course. Old habits resurface, especially in moments of stress. Mom still occasionally slips into guilt trip mode, but now we recognize these patterns when they emerge, and that recognition alone is powerful. Have you ever had to set a difficult boundary with family? How did it change your relationships? Share your experiences in the comments below.